Hey, Richest you money maniacs, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about how the Fed is paying for all of the bailouts. Isn't it wonderful? Let's get right to it. Hey, Richest you money maniacs. This is Tom coming at you from the Richest You. Thanks for tuning in again. In this video, I want to present a really exciting idea I have about how the Fed can help with the bailouts. Now, first off, they're already taking a whole bunch of action. But before I get into that, I felt like it was really important for a lot of folks to understand some very important basic fundamentals about the Federal Reserve Bank. The first thing to explain when it comes to the Federal Reserve is that it's not actually a government agency. If you don't believe me, please do yourself a favor. Go look this up. The Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States of America, is a privately held corporation with stockholders who expect to make a profit year over year over year. In fact, since its inception in 1917, the Federal Reserve has never failed to make a profit for its stockholders. That means even when the market is going up or down, especially recently down a lot, they still make profit. Those stockholders, and curiously enough, it's a very guarded secret as to who these stockholders actually are. They make profit all the time, all day long. And here's why. Because the Federal Reserve, as the lender of last resort for the US government, is allowed to actually print money out of thin air. In fact, they don't even print the money anymore. You can see interviews of the directors of federal central banks on television saying, we don't actually print any money. We just add zeros on a computer and in an account that has nothing in it.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account that they have with the Fed. So it's much more akin, although not exactly the same, but it's much more akin to printing money than it is to borrowing.
You've been printing money.
So there's no gold, there's no silver behind it, there's no tobacco, there's no cows, there's no corn, there's no nothing behind it. It's just the fact that the US government, our politicians, our lawmakers have said that, well, you know, we need this money to grow the government and no one else will loan it to us at a low enough rate. So we have to go to the lender of last resort, the Federal Reserve, and borrow that money from them. So what happens is the Federal Reserve buys treasury bills and municipal bonds. They buy bonds, they buy government debt. And so the government says, here's an IOU, give me $850 billion to bail out the US economy and to send out to citizens and to help bail out businesses. And they say, okay, $850 billion, let me go to my Federal Reserve computer and tippity tap. Okay, here you go, $850 billion, just like that, out of thin air. So it doesn't really matter if the market's going up or down. The Federal Reserve doesn't work at anything. All they do is just type numbers into a computer, and then the US government and the US people and the US businesses all go to work and start working on paying back that debt. So I hope that's clear. They're a private bank. They have private stockholders who nobody knows who they actually are, and they print money. They don't print money. They invent money out of thin air. Out of not even thin air, it's all ones and zeros now, that you as a taxpayer are required by law to pay back because your elected official said, I'm going to take out this loan with the Federal Reserve. You elected me into office, and so you're going to get stuck with this bill. But the really, really sinister thing about it is, it's not just you and I that are stuck with the bill. It's our children and our grandchildren and our great grandchildren are also stuck with it. So you got to remember something. The U.S. debt, national debt, is already in the trillions and trillions of dollars. In fact, in this video, you'll see a clip of what it actually is right now, and you can go to a counter and see how many trillions of dollars it is. Now, divide that amount by how much money the IRS actually brings in taxes each year. So divide the amount of national debt by how much tax money is actually brought in by the government every year. And what you'll discover is that we're talking about generations of people who will be enslaved to the Federal Reserve by debt. As of this recording, the national debt for the United States is actually at $23.5 trillion. Trillion. So take that number and divide it by how much the U.S. government pulls in taxes each year. And that will tell you how many years it would take to pay for the debt as it is right now while I'm recording this video. And what you find is, without increasing it, because remember, every day the government is spending more, especially now with the stock market crashing, they're sending out billions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars around the world to try and prop up our currency, right? They're trying to keep the economies from getting worse, and actually it's just making it worse and making actually the downturn last longer, but that's a whole nother video. The point is, when you realize how many years it's going to take the U.S. economy, U.S. taxpayers, U.S. businesses to actually pay that debt off without increasing it, just the $23.5 trillion, you realize that through debt, we as a nation have been enslaved for generations to a private company called the Federal Reserve and their stockholders. Now, is that terrible? Is that bad? No, I mean, it's not the best situation to be in. And you know, they did help kind of stabilize the economy, I guess, except for 1929 and 1987 and the recession of the 70s and the dot-com boom in the 90s, and of course 2008, and now of course this crash in 2020. So maybe they didn't really stabilize the economy as much as people say. Maybe they really don't know what they're doing, except when it comes to making profit. They are really good at making money for their stockholders. Boy, you know, congratulations to them. They did a great job of making sure that their stockholders have lots of profit. Now, the wonderful thing about them being a private corporation in the United States is the idea that it's a privilege to do business in the United States. You are granted the privilege by paying taxes and being registered with a state in the United States to be able to do business. So I guess, you know, maybe the Federal Reserve is registered with the District of Columbia. But the wonderful thing about that is that it can actually be revoked if that corporation proves that its interests are in conflict with the best interests of the United States. If their interests, making profit at any cost, is in conflict with the safety and security of the U.S. people, the citizens, and the U.S. government, the politicians, and the U.S. policies, both domestic and foreign, then that privilege can be revoked by the people and by the elected officials. Which is why I'm excited to make this video, because I had this wonderful idea. I thought, you know, usually when the government talks about bailing out corporations because of an economic downturn, or bailing out even just common citizens because of the coronavirus, and there's so much suffering right now because of that, financially as well as emotionally in the families and people who are losing people. You know, when they talk about that, what they usually mean in a bailout is that our elected officials go to the Federal Reserve and they give them another big, huge IOU for $850 billion or $1 trillion, or however much it is that they vote and decide that this is what we're going to spend to try and stimulate the economy. We're going to bail out these businesses, and we're going to stimulate the economy with this stimulus package to get things moving again and get people buying products and going out and spending time and spending money. Get the economy moving. Make money change hands. That's what keeps things going, and that's what also builds the tax base. So instead of them going to the Federal Reserve and giving them an IOU, and then the Federal Reserve, of course, owns us for the next 150 years through debt. Instead of that, I had this wonderful flash of genius. I don't know if it's genius or if it's just a really great idea, but it would be comparable to a flash of genius. I thought, holy cow, they've made money. They, the Federal Reserve, and their private stockholders have made money off of the United States citizens, taxpayers, and government since 1917. They got lots of money. So if from now on they prove that they can't seem to keep the economy moving in a positive fashion, or at least being stable, if they prove that on such a regular basis that they crash the economy so that they can take value and enslave us through debt for 150 years, then they should have that privilege of making profit revoked. Take it away from them. That doesn't mean that they can't do business with us. That doesn't mean that they can't still be a corporation and work inside the United States. It just means that, how about they bail out everybody? They bail out all of the United States citizens who are having trouble because of the health challenge. How about they bail out Boeing? How about they bail out the banks? How about they bail out all of the businesses that are failing because the economy is having so much trouble? I mean, this probably wouldn't even put a dent in the amount of money that they've made over that 100+ years. It would be just little tiny bit of what they've actually profited. I suspect that they're way beyond trillions in terms of money that they've made.
1 billion, gajillion, fifillion, million. Yes.
On top of the fact that they don't really have to work to make this happen. They just have to go to their computer and type in a few numbers.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account that they have with the Fed.
And next thing you know, and then give it to the U.S. government to be able to send out as economic stimulus packages, and also as bailouts for companies, and say, you know what? We really appreciate doing business with the United States so much that we're not going to accept that IOU. We're not going to make you sell us anything. We're just going to give you this money out of the kindness of our heart because we appreciate doing business with the United States of America. We appreciate, as the Federal Reserve, we love America so much too that we want to help get the economy going again, and we're going to give you this money for free. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go beyond just giving you 0% interest. We're actually just going to give you truckloads of money so that you can stimulate the economy. I think that would be only fair. They've profited in up markets and down markets for over 100 years. How about this time the Federal Reserve reaches down in their deep, deep pockets and out of the generosity of their hearts takes the profits from their stockholders, their private corporate stockholders, and gives it to the American people to be able to stimulate the economy back into good health again. That's my recommendation. That was my idea, my flash of genius. And I know exactly which senator I would love to actually spearhead this idea on the Senate floor. And that would be Senator Rand Paul. That man I believe in. I believe he has the best interests of every single individual in this country, and that he really understands monetary policy. I don't think that you can be Ron Paul's son and not really understand what's going on. So Senator Rand Paul, this is my personal request to you to draft a bill that requires by law and is adopted maybe even into the Constitution that the Federal Reserve, when they prove that they are irresponsible with the U.S. economy and the currency supply, that the consequence for them is to have to pay to correct the challenge out of their own profits. And that after a certain number of times that they fail to run it properly and have to pay out of their own profits, that after a certain number of times, their privilege of doing business with the United States can and shall be revoked. I think that they should be given the chance to correct themselves. I think that they should be given the chance to prove that they really do have the United States people's best interests in their hearts, and that their intentions are good for the United States, its economic, its foreign, and its domestic policies. The best of intentions for each and every American. Senator Rand Paul, would you please do that for us? Would you draft and present a bill asking for this kind of accountability for the Federal Reserve? It seems only fair that they should have to pay to clean up their mistake without laying us with the debt to cover their mistake. So that is why I was so excited to make this video and share it with everybody tonight. And I hope that you understand it. If you have any questions, please make sure you write down in the comments the question. I would love to actually be able to answer them or even begin a dialogue with you. In fact, if you really like this video, do me a huge favor and give a thumbs up and click the subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more information that I have to share. But that's it for right now. I think that that's a really powerful idea, and I know that Senator Rand Paul, if anybody could do it, you could. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.